Hi everybody, it's Mythic. This is part 6 of my PCT so far in Washington State in 2022. This is day 26, August 24th. Started out at trail mile 2465.3, the Stevens Pass ski resort area. I had a 10-mile water carry, so I filled up at a nice little waterfall. And I had a really heavy pack because I was going to be on trail for 7 days, so I had 7 days worth of food plus 10 miles of water, so it was weighing me down. But I did find a beautiful lake to chillax nearby. As I was heading out on the trail, I was aware that there were some forest fires on the east side of the trail, and as I came up onto a ridge, I could see the forest fires in the distance, and I just kind of froze. Even though I knew they were there, it still was scary to see. But luckily another hiker came by and shared information with me, reassured me that it was heading east and it wasn't going to impact us. So it had started sprinkling a little bit as I was hiking up to that ridge, and then shortly after we talked, it really started raining, and I was never so glad to be wet in my whole life. I said, bring on the rain. That night I camped with a view of Glacier Peak, and the smell of smoke was really strong. I think maybe the weather might have pushed the smoke down into the valleys. I did 15.9 miles that day. Day 27 started out at trail mile 2481.2. That morning I stopped at Pear Lake for a break, and I talked with another hiker who was heading southbound. He had stayed at Lake Sally Ann that night before and said he saw a helicopter come to the lake 9 times over the course of the night to get water to fight the forest fires. It was a beautiful lake that I enjoyed hanging out at, but I had to keep on moving. I kept on walking through a field of boulders, and I took a snack break in that field of boulders and felt very small compared to them. A little bit later, I found cell service on a ridge, so I took a little break, dried out my sleeping bag in the sun, and there were so many blueberries and huckleberries, I was in heaven. That night I camped at Lake Sally Ann. The first campsite I picked right next to the lake was a little too windy, so I chose to move my campsite into the trees and have a little bit more shelter. I did 13.3 miles that day. Day 28 started out at trail mile 2494.5, Lake Sally Ann. Woke up to a beautiful morning at the lake. A little bit later, I took a nice lunch break with the shade and a view of a little pond, reflection pond. The water was a little shallow, so I had to make sure that I didn't scoop up a whole bunch of silt into my filter when I was filtering out the water. That afternoon had a very long, very exposed climb with sun and wind, and then clouds and fog started to come up over the ridge, and it was very awe-inspiring. My first campsite choice near a broken bridge over Bay Coast Creek was full, so I had to keep on pushing on. That next stretch of trail was very overgrown, very dewy. It had been sprinkling on and off, so all of that damp vegetation made me all wet. There were a whole bunch of very large blowdowns to climb over, but at least the elevation gain was not very high. It was relatively flat, so I was glad to get a couple more miles in before the end of the day. It was really cold that night too. I did 17.1 miles that day. Day 29 started out at trail mile 2511.6. I had that campsite all to myself that night. This morning I was walking over huge blowdowns, the trail was overgrown, streams were running down the trail, and I had to cross a very large, very cold river, and I was pretty intimidated. I followed 4 young Dutch women across, and as I was crossing, I was facing upstream as you're supposed to do, but I tipped forward and I had to catch myself with my hands, and then I was very cold. It was drizzling on and off all day. It was a little bit of a depressing morning. Later on that day, I came to Mica Lake. It was a stunning blue color, and I had hoped to stop and have supper there, but it was very windy, and I was already a little bit too cold, so I decided to keep on hiking. I had loved ones that were watching my progress on my Garmin tracking app, and I got a message from Southern Minnesota guy. He and Blue Magic had been watching my progress, and they were concerned that I had gotten off trail trying to find a different way to cross Milk Creek, but this section of trail had been rerouted, so they were looking at the old route on Garmin, and I was following the new route on Far Out. I had run out of daylight trying to get to the campsite I had hoped to get to, so I was camping beside the trail, not at an official campsite, but I was safe, not lost off trail, and I had to take a very long time to message them back on my Garmin device. I did 13.8 miles that day. Thanks for watching.